Generative character collections like Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks have sold for millions of dollars on NFT marketplaces. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own 3D generative character collections using Unity and C#. First, I'll go into some background about computer generation. Then I'll talk about some of the character components you need to create your own collection, as well as where to get them. And finally, we'll dive into the code for generating your own character collection. So let's start with some context about how computer generation works and how we can leverage it to create our collections. At its core is this idea that if we take a finite number of elements and multiply them by the possible combinations of those elements, we can create a very large opportunity space of outputs. A great real-world example of this is Legos and Lego characters. So each Lego character or minifigure is created with a few basic types of parts. So it's going to have a head, it'll have a torso, it'll have some arms, and it'll have some legs. Now with just a few of each of these parts, we can actually create a very large number of unique characters. So for instance, let's say that I have 3 of the heads and 3 of the torsos. By combining them in different ways, I can actually create 9 unique characters just from those 6 different pieces. And of course, you can imagine that if I add in extra pieces like the types of legs it has, or the type of equipment it has, its hair, etc., we can quickly build up to extremely large opportunity spaces. So as in our first example, if we have 3 heads and 3 torsos, we'll end up with 9 different figures. Now, if we add in 3 leg pieces, then we now get up to 27 different characters. And if we take it one step further and say that we have 5 of each piece instead, we now have 125 different characters that we could create. The basic formula for this is that the total opportunity space is going to equal the number of different options we have to the power of the different types of options that we have. This is the paradigm or phenomena that we'll be leveraging to create our own 3D character collections in the rest of this video. So now that we understand the basics of generation and how we'll be leveraging it to create our own collections, we need to gather the different components, the different pieces, if you will, of the characters that we'll be creating. So if we were doing Legos, for instance, we would find the different heads, we'd find the different torsos, etc., and that's what we would be using to build our collection. But now that we're doing it in 3D, we need to go get some 3D models of each of the different pieces that we want. So actually deciding on a theme and finding these pieces for your collection is outside the scope of this video, but I can recommend a few different places for you to look if you don't have them already. For free and cheap and good quality 3D models, I typically recommend the Unity Asset Store, TurboSquid, or Sketchfab. All of them have a large selection, and you can typically filter by the types of models that they have, as well as the cost. For this demo, I'm going to be using the Polygon Modular Fantasy Characters pack that I picked up from the Unity Asset Store a while back in a sale. I think this pack is a good fit for generative character collections because it has modular components. Each of these pieces has the same kind of theme, aesthetic, and also scale. And on top of that, it's really easy to import into Unity because I got it from the Unity Asset Store. Once you've gathered the pieces for each of your characters, we can move on to actually generating our collection. So to do the actual generation, in general, we just need 3 different things. First is a way to randomize the different piece we're going to use for each character. Next is a way to instantiate it into our scene or virtual world. And then finally, we need to place them in the appropriate place so that it makes sense for our character. Now we'll dive into a Unity scene I created to do just this, and I'll show you how it works. So here we are in the Unity scene. I'm going to run it a few times just to show you what it does and also prove that it works. So here we can see I've run it, and then we've got our little character created here, and then here's our little scene mode, so we can kind of see that it's just a basic scene. I've just created a big quad over here to provide a background, and we've just got some directional light and a camera. That's it. So this is the character we've created. If I stop the scene and replay a few times, you can see that it's going to create a new combination each time, a new character. And to keep it simple, I've decided to just keep it with a head covering like a hat, and then I've given it some eyebrows because that's what came in the pack that I had. I've also changed the colors around a little bit so you can kind of see what another layer of generation looks like and how you can open up your opportunity space a bit. So this is what it does, and let's talk about how it actually works. So when we look at the Unity scene that I have, we see that it's pretty basic. I just have a camera, the directional light, and then this generative character part is the basis for our generation. So Attached to my generative character, if we look in the inspector, I have a script, which we'll go into in a second. But the other basics I want you to get out of this is I have in my scene each of the different parts that we're going to use in the generation. So I have all the different heads that I want to use. I have all of the head coverings I want to use. And then I have all of the different eyebrows I want to use right here. And this is what's actually being read in by my script and then leading to this output character. Now let's dive into the code. So here I just have the script that I've attached to the object in my Unity scene. And here we just have a bunch of different settings. So for the different colors, I basically just have black, white, and red. That's what I'm setting each of those objects to. I have some positions settings, which is basically saying based on how I want my character to look and the sizes of these different components, like the eyebrow or the head covering or the head, this is where I need to move it. This is how I need to resize it in order for it to make sense. Then we have some internal things like component lists, where I'm basically reading in each of the available options at the start of the scene so that I can access them later very fast. And then, of course, we've got our random. So these are all the settings that I'm going to be using, and then I'll walk through how this actually works. So first, on awake, we are generating random, which we'll use throughout our scene. And then we're going to build the component lists. All this is doing is looking at the hierarchy of the scene, finding each of the different types of things I have and reading them into our memory. So it's getting all the heads, all the head coverings, and all the eyebrows. After that, once the frames start going, we hit the start in the life cycle, and I call generate character. And one by one, we're going to generate our head covering, and then our eyebrows. So each of these is doing basically the same thing. First, we're going to find a random element from this type of item. So we're going to get just a random head from our list of all heads. Then we're going to use that position that we configured earlier to make sure that it's positioned right in our scene. We're going to set it to active to make it actually appear on the screen. And then we're going to set a color on it. We're just passing in the game object it has and giving it a random color. The same thing is true for the head covering, and then the only slight difference that we have is in the eyebrows, because we only have, one eyebrow. We actually have to flip it around so it makes sense on the other side of the face. And we do that by just having a little helper here, passing in the position and rotation we want. If it's the left one, then we'll just flip it 180 horizontal, and we'll change the vector a little bit so that it's mirrored on the other side. And with this scene and this code, we're able to create different characters that have, different head, different eyebrows. And that's an example of how you can create your own generative 3D character collections in Unity and C#. Now, I know I went through this code rather fast, so I'll have the full source code available up on my website, link down below. So you can go through there, get the code, change it around however you want. I can't give you the direct assets that I'm using because that's against their licensing agreement, but you should be able to change around the code that I give you to fit whatever collection you find rather easily. If you want to learn more about how to record your own Unity scene, check out this video. And then if you want to dive into more of generative art using Unity and C#, check out this one.